So, Charisse, the audience who follows Asian Americans Advancing Justice LA is largely Asian American, Native, White, and Pacific Islander. For our audience, what would you suggest that we could be doing better to be better allies to the Black community and to address anti-Blackness, including within our own communities?
Connie, I think it starts with both of us. And how do we lift up not only anti Black racism, what is happening in the API community right now is detrimental to everyone who cares about humanity. When you have any type of discrimination, racism, it is also what is our responsibility to really learn from each other. For me, the ally is I could tell Connie's story because I know her. You could talk about Charisse and Brotherhood Crusade because you know me. And so if you have someone who you think is an ally, are they really your ally if you don't know them? If you don't know what drives them, if you don't know their story, if you don't know how you're connected to the work, and so you don't have partnerships and relationships unless you take time, no matter what color you are. I mean, for Black folks in this city, it is a pain that goes so deep, Connie, that I don't think people really understand. That if we are 8% of the population, but 40% of homelessness
Yeah.
in the city, if our unemployment rate is triple of any other nationality in this city, if we have housing insecurities, when young people can't get employed because of their color of their skin, because you're discriminating against them just because of what you think or because of their zip code. We want the API community to understand that when you take time to meet with a young person, to share your values, to share your customs, to share your community, it works both ways because we want you to be open to bringing us into your tent. The more that we align and help each other build out any deep rooted racism, we all benefit. Your challenges are my challenges. When I think about what is happening of the Asian community around COVID, it is a pain, Connie, because I know what that pain is. I know when a young Black youth of mine is pulled over by law enforcement for doing nothing.
Mhm.
And so for me to know that my Asian brothers and sisters are like being attacked because of propaganda, for a former person who will be nameless, basically said this is okay by how you paint this narrative. And now we see when you use any type of discrimination against people of color, it has no place.
Let's acknowledge the fact that there has been a history of conflict between the Asian Pacific Islander and Black communities in the past. I'm a Los Angelino Korean American. I grew up here in '92 and witnessed the LA riots. What do you think are the root causes of some of these conflicts, and what can we learn from those past struggles?
It really, I mean, and Connie, I think of Latasha Harlins.
Mm-hmm.
I think about a young woman who lost her life and that pain and history of what does that mean for a young person. It's like with law enforcement and so that trust has to be built. The Rodney King of understanding what happened of it was throughout the city that looting and riots and anger took place. And so the conflict is having the bandwidth now to do the heavy lift. And so when you think about how do you change the mindset of relationships, it's having those conversations now. How do we improve partnerships and relationships and trust building? Because trust doesn't happen overnight. But if you trust someone, then if an incident happens, I could get on the phone and say, Connie, how do we get in front of this? We're here, and how do we align collectively right now as a community to address these concerns? We are so much better when we are collectively doing the heavy lift on the front end. And what does that mean? So many people don't want to do the heavy lift because they are responsible for their whatever their role is, if it's in corporate America, if it's in nonprofit, if it's in politics, if it's in entertainment. What is our responsibility to cultivate and build out trust with our colleagues in our community? And so that's what, to me, the learning is. We learn that when we don't communicate or we don't share or we don't try to deal with tough issues, they don't go away. How do we begin to have that conversation now, especially with bringing young people into this space? I'm one who believes young people have the vision and the capacity to move all of this in ways that I don't even think about. You know, I think I'm creative, and then I'll talk to a young person. I was like, oh, I didn't even think about that, you know, and I love to hear their voices because it informs how I do our work at Brotherhood Crusade.
With the Black Lives Matter movement last year and the murder of George Floyd, there was a public reckoning in this country around the criminal justice system and racism and anti-Blackness. And I think in the Asian Pacific Islander community, we're also looking at the criminal justice system because of the rise in hate crimes against our community members, and that involves law enforcement as well. When it comes to criminal justice reform, in your mind, what does actual change in the system look like?
You know, I just think about like with bail reform, that like knowing the amount of separation of Black families that have been part of the over criminalization of what takes place for someone in poverty, of how they are criminalized, how bail is set for them, how the system sees them as a criminal because of the color of their skin. And so the reform efforts are from all aspects. I think as we just this week, it's finally been approved with LAUSD with the $25 million of their school police system being allocated to Black student achievement. The equity is because Black students who are part of LAUSD are failing at an alarming rate. So the resources need to be reallocated to support and strengthening Black students, as well as with LA City, how not nearly enough of reallocating from the police, because every police budget has the largest amount from the county, from the city, when they measure J, of really looking at, for me, reforming the systems of providing prevention, providing equity, providing support. But also when you look at the uptick for what is happening in the API community now, there should be allocation of education, like an outreach strategy of changing the narrative of what was created. When you think about system change, it is around allocating dollars to when you see any type of discrimination, racial injustice, that we are moving a system to ensure that the folks who have been hit I don't want to even say hit. I mean, when you think of what the numbers and data say around police brutality, around Black individuals being pulled over, the stats from Metro Division of what they were doing to Black and Latino people in our community, the data tells a story that says all of it has to be changed. There is good policing. There are good police officers in our communities. So I am not against law enforcement. And I have to try to tell people that just because I'm advocating to ensure that we have the opportunity to invest, that all of the disinvestments that have been happening and the criminal justice system, how they criminalize Black and brown families. The system is broken. But also when you think about racial justice, Connie, like I said, of understanding the hate crimes, the rise of hate crimes. So if you're looking at equity, how do we combat that story? How do we ensure that hate is nowhere in our community? Because it's almost like hate against Black and brown folks when we're being penalized all the time.
I'll have conversations with friends who are Asian or white, and they talk about the shenanigans we all got into when we were youth, and somebody was taking all sorts of drugs in college, or they were selling weed on campus, or somebody got in trouble for a DUI, and this and that, and we laugh about it as, oh, what crazy stupid kids we were as youth. And I think now about what privilege we have to even be able to laugh about it and talk about it that way, because we were given so much lenience as Asian Pacific Islanders and as whites that the Black and brown community does not get when it comes to the criminal justice system and those kinds of same mistakes in their youth.
We never get a pass, Connie,
No.
And that's it. And so when you talk about white privilege, I want folks to understand that it's our responsibility from just a care. How do you care for others who have the least? Again, how do we educate our community to become their best advocate? And the only way we could do that is to help educate our young people that you are your best voice. So they can know that no matter what their zip code is, they belong in every space.
So, Charisse, can you talk to us about why it's important for all of us to be celebrating Black History Month?
The celebration of Black History Month for me is really to highlight our accomplishments, but also to understand it's not just February, it's really that we should own Black history every day. Every day as a Black leader, every day that I stand on the shoulders of our ancestors, every day that I understand how we have been impacted by slavery, how we've been impacted by Jim Crow, how we've been impacted by also the greatness of Harriet Tubman, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., the leaders who have fought for us to have a seat at the table, but understanding their accomplishments not only impact Black people, it impacts the world. And so for me, Black history is, as I talk about it, I always talk about, well, I live it every day. Mm-hmm. I live it as a Black woman. I live it as understanding what our story, our journey, that we are evolving as a people, but also the pain of what we have endured in this country. I think of it just really as a celebration of what is great. It's like when you know you are great as a people, you're proud. Yes, I'm proud that we have Black History Month, but I'm just proud of the greatness. And how do you share that with others? When I think of Black History Month, I think of Brotherhood Crusade's history. I think about 1965 when we had the Watts Rebellion, and my father was brought here to lead a group of Black leaders out of the Black Congress to really understand if we're not willing to do for our own people, how would anyone be involved with us or support us? So I think about my family. I think about my father. I think about my great great grandfather. I think about how my family was brought here from Nigeria to Texas. And what does that mean? And understanding like the Bremond legacy for me is not just my father, who was a philanthropist, my mother was an educator, my uncle, brilliant attorney who was a partner in a law firm. My family opened Bryant's Mortuary in San Francisco. My grandmother worked in the hotel industry as a housekeeper for 48 years as a single mother. What does that mean? It means that we are proud. We have a story. And that to me is Black history. Black history is not only all the people who paved the way, it's you taking time to understand your own history. Because when you understand that, it resonates of my confidence of who I am.
Absolutely. So I'm hearing we should be celebrating and appreciating Black history and Black culture every day of our lives, not just in the month of February, which is also the shortest month of the year, which I've heard quite about a lot of beef about. Well, Charisse Bremond-Weaver, you are amazing, and I consider it such a blessing to have met you. And in the short 5, 6 months that I've known you, I feel such a profound respect and connection with you, and really look forward to finding ways that we are going to continue to partner and grow together, both getting to know each other as well as for our organizations and our communities. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Connie, for having me. It was a blast.